the thing is that you can't stay stuck because out of fear. When you stay in these kinds of relationships because it's the devil you know, it's still the devil. And at the end of the day, it's just going to get worse. There's no way to make these kind of relationships work. And definitely not in a safe, happy, fulfilling, you deserve better. But when someone beats you down, you feel like you don't deserve better. But nobody deserves to be treated the way that you are in these relationships. No one. I don't care what you've done. I don't care if you've sent a crazy text. It's not on you.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Welcome back to Small Steps, Big Wins family. Today, I am honored to introduce to you Julie Barth. She's a writer, mother of 6, trauma survivor, and founder of the Colin James Barth Outreach. I read her book. It's a memoir called Notes from a Blackberry, and it chronicles love, loss, and resilience. And I started reading. I couldn't put it down. It was captivating, actually. And she has an amazing's not even the right word, story that she is going to share with us. What I loved about her story is that she sheds light on hidden struggles, and then how in her story you can empower women to understand that leaving just isn't just possible. Sometimes leaving things is necessary, and I found that very intriguing, that concept. So we're going to talk about that as well. Welcome, Julie.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, Sue. Stacey. Good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
And I'm glad you're here too. I'm going to let you open with who you are and your story, and from there we'll launch into wherever else you'd like to go.
Sounds good. My story is one of those. I always say it's that story that goes and then. So I'll try to give you a brief synopsis. I have a special needs daughter. I'm the mother of 6, and I lost my first husband to pancreatic cancer. We were childhood friends. We met, and that's the book that you're speaking of. It's the story of him and my daughter, Tatum. We were young. He was my first kiss. I was not his. He thinks that's hilarious. And then we kind of parted ways for many years. We met back up again after high school and college was over, and it was like I found my best friend again. So we ended up having our first son and moving home back to our hometown. And shortly after that, our second daughter came along. I had a miscarriage or two in between, and it's not that uncommon, so we didn't really think that much about it. But I was a nervous wreck when I found out that I was pregnant with our daughter, Tatum. Right out the gate, it was like she just stopped growing. So I would go in and they'd say, congratulations, you're 6 weeks pregnant. And then I would go back 10 weeks. Congratulations, you're 6 weeks. And, you don't know how good the measurements are, and you get somebody different every time. So I kind of brushed it off. But there was, you get that sense that something's not right. From there, it just spiraled. It was one thing after another. I started bleeding. We thought we were going to lose her. And then, they kept saying first she had trisomy 18, which is a third chromosome of the 18th chromosome, and then I had an amniocentesis, and that wasn't the problem. So then, I would go in and she'd grow 2 days and in 2 weeks. And then I would grow and she'd grow a week and a week. So there was no rhyme or reason. And we had all these professionals chiming in about what they thought would happen. There was one that said she'd come out, never breathe, but the prevailing thought was she's sick. We just don't know why. But they would show me the ultrasound and she looked perfect. There were no markers. There was nothing there. And even if there were, a woman that I don't know if I could make any decision regarding that without any proof, but we just kind of crossed our fingers and hoped that for the best.
For context, how old were you at that time?
I was 30. So, so Hayden, our oldest, was about 5. So I wasn't, terribly young, but I had been through enough at that point it was a lot. I remember after about 37 weeks, they decided to induce more, I think so, because I was a mess. Whatever was going on with her, I couldn't take the roller coaster ride anymore. So they induced, and then that's kind of when everything just exploded. She was born 3 pounds 6 ounces. They weren't prepared. They thought she was about 5 pounds. So, instrument error again. But she came out and she just couldn't breathe. She had some heart issues, but they were all really kind of resolved within the first 24 hours, whatever it was. But the next 3 months, from there, we stayed in the NICU to try and, figure out globally, I guess, what was going on, but more so to fix whatever was presented. After about 3 weeks, I think, we knew that we were going to, that she was going to make it. There was kind of a feeling on both of our parts, like, great, but what are we looking at here? Because her body had just been through so much in those short 3 weeks. So, long story short, there was no Google. So it wasn't like, we just knew she wasn't growing. At a year old, she was 8 pounds and she was running around the house and her shoes were like 0 to 3 months. But we had all these specialists saying, well, she had a really rough start or the placenta might not have been working. So I could brush it off and say, okay. And everyone says to you when you have a special needs daughter who's in the NICU or son, there's going to come a day when you probably won't even notice. They'll be fine. And I could live with that. I wanted that. I was happy with that because then I could hold on to thinking she was going to be fine. When she turned about 2, we had all kinds of reconstructive surgery for her throat. And when she turned 2, that's when things started getting kind of strange. There was a Discovery Channel show where they had kids who had primordial dwarfism on it. Now, I hadn't seen it, but I had a friend call, a very close friend, and she said, I know what Tatum has. And I was like, well, good for you, because I've seen specialists all across the world.
Join in with everybody else.
Yeah. So far all I'd heard is that she looks funny, which I was like, I know she looks funny. But she said it to me and I was like, okay. And then I had random strangers coming up to me at the store and saying, is your daughter the one on that Discovery Channel show? And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. So, and it was just a really bizarre time of life and Google was just coming to the forefront. So, I did what everybody does and I got online, I Googled primordial dwarfism and popped Tatum. It was like this bulb went out in my head, like, oh my gosh. And, there's no marker for it genetically. So it's really a matter of size and history. And she was always 2 inches too big or, she just didn't meet that package of whatever they had thought it was. This is 24 years ago, if you can imagine.
Yeah, right. I was just ready to say, for context, I think this was around 2001, 2002-ish. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. So it wasn't like we could go to a hospital and they would just put in our information and,
Yeah.
And at the time, we thought it was like a 1 in a million thing. And I still know it's rare, but I don't think it's as rare as, we thought it was back when there wasn't people in communities and talking about like, oh, I have these symptoms, I think probably a lot of the people in her category were able to kind of just, oh, she was just small. So it was kind of devastating to find out that, we had a diagnosis, I guess, because that kind of, my brain limits, that everything was just going to be normal and fine, whatever normal and fine looks like. But, Colin was the first to say, I remember he looked at me and he was like, did you really think she was totally normal? And I was like, yeah, I kind of did. And he was
I think every parent does. Every parent thinks their kids, I have 3 kids of my own, just for context, and every parent thinks their kids are brilliant and perfect and, they fit into this great box. And as it should be, because as I was reading your book too, what I took away in certain parts is that you never felt sorry for her. And you still don't. And you view her as beautiful and smart and charming and fun. And you see past the limitations. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of your story and her story and how you've taken that idea and instead of going into all the negative, you still choose to see the positive out of it.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that I've always felt like I was going to make whatever was going on globally, because everyone wanted to know what was wrong with her, what's wrong with her. And in my head, I was always kind of like, who cares? Like, let's focus on what we can do in the here and now. Let's fix the problems as we see them come up. Forget about, because I had people right out the gate that were saying, oh, she's going to be disabled. Well, what does that mean? Well, we don't know. Okay, then why are you telling me? Let's just, don't
I like
set
that
me up.
perspective. Yeah, I like that perspective because anybody listening can apply that to every day. Why speculate out this, that, and the other thing? Why don't you just take what's in front of you for what it is and deal with what's in front of you? And when something comes, something comes. So I feel like that's something that's been a constant thread in your life, even with the challenges that you went through with Colin and then the challenges with your second husband as well, which I'm sure you'll get into those, has been because your story is just like one of, wow, like what else can happen next? What else can happen next? And it speaks to your resilience, which we'll get into as well once you pull out your story a little bit more, because I really think there is that element of resilience, resistance, anti-fragile confidence, whatever you want to call it, that is just incredible. That, you just have this what next to your story. You had the what next, but yet you're still here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. And people, I've had people say to me, like, I don't know how you did it. In my head, I'm like, if I were given other options, that might have been a different thing. But, and I think that it is really easy to become overwhelmed by something and to take, it's funny because I was never in a medical situation before where I just thought you went to the doctor, they told you what it was, you listened, you went home. And in my, caregiving with Colin and with Tatum, what I learned is they're professionals. They don't know everything, and they can surmise, they can guess, they can estimate. But really, I always felt like, okay, when they said something to me, I was like, you believe what you believe, and I'm going to believe what I believe. And I guess that's always the way that I approached it. Like, okay, because and maybe part of it was every time they said, Hayden won't be able to, I turned around and she was doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's, I think we're a good team. We've always been a good team. I push her and and I say, we're going to do this. And she says, okay. And Colin was she was such a daddy's girl. And he was the comfort and the love and the come here. And I would push. And he would step in and he would make it okay. So we were the perfect team to tag team one another to, push her to be as great as she was, but Colin always gave her the confidence to say, when you're done, it's okay to take a break too.
Yeah.
So I think that she had the best of both worlds in our marriage and in our partnership with her. And I think that's why she is as amazing as she is.
And talk about your journey with Colin and from Tatum to the transition with Colin's illness. Share of that journey.
Sure. So right as Tatum was getting better, we knew about our limitations. We had gone to the Mayo Clinic and she had reconstructive surgery because she had a trach. And that really limited us with nursing and everything else. So we were at a point where we were like, because we were still young, we were in our 30s, and, all of our friends and the people around us were enjoying life with their little kids. And so we thought, oh, fantastic, like, she's getting her trach out. We're going to vacation. We're going to rejoin life. We're going to. Unfortunately, about 2 years later, Colin was just not feeling well. We were best friends, and he just wasn't being himself. I could tell that something was going on. I thought it was the stress of work, but we were having this huge party, and I said, you need to go to the hospital and figure out what's going on, because he kept coming back and forth from the doctors with different, antacids. And so he went into the hospital and was there for hours. And finally, by the time I had made it there, it was just in time to find out that he had a tumor on his pancreas. So from that minute on, just kind of everything snowballed. We found out 2 days later that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And at that time, our oldest was about 10, and I just had our 4th, and she was 6 months. So they said to me, take him home. He's got 2 weeks to live. Let him say goodbye. And true to me, I said, okay. It is a horrible disease. And I remember them talking, talk about medical professionals saying something to you. Here we were, he was 33. I said, in front of him, oh, if you're going to get cancer, this is the most painful and most horrible to get. And I was like,
thank you.
Yeah.
What can you say to that,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's supposed to make you feel better.
Yeah. And maybe to prepare us. I don't know what it was for, but he did end up living 16 months, which some was a blessing. Wow. Yeah, other was not so much. But again, the fighter, and he wasn't going. He had a young family. He was, and to put more in context, his mother had ovarian cancer. At one point, she was like the oldest living ovarian cancer patient in the United States, and it's genetically linked. So there was that part of us that thought, well, if she can do it, because she lived 70 and she was diagnosed at 40, we thought, well, if she can do it, he can do it. And he was doing really, really well for a very long time, and then he just wasn't.
Wow. What were some of the things you learned out of that experience?
I think, on the negative side, and I don't like to focus ever on the negative, but if I'm going to be honest, I never really knew what cancer means. I don't think I could have ever imagined watching what I watch him go through what he did, behind closed doors. And I think that's partially why I decided to release this book, is that I don't think it's like looking at 9/11. You can't possibly imagine what you're going to endure, watch, be party to, and just everything until you're in it. And for everyone else, it's like the world keeps spinning, but yours doesn't. And watching him every day, I lost a little bit more of him. That was something that, you just never get past. But in a positive way, I had some, those 16 months were that, we just had so many good memories and moments, and he never took a minute for granted. He fought. I've never seen anyone fight so hard. He was a character, so he said a lot of funny stuff and did a lot of funny things.
It's amazing what humor does.
It really, if I did not have, humor is my drug of choice, I will say. If I did not have it, I don't know where I would be. But really, so that's why the book is called Notes from a Blackberry. I would take him down to chemo on Tuesdays, and it was supposed to be this time for us. We had 4 little kids running around in Tatum, and I had these visions that we're going to reunite and have time, and we just, we would get there and he'd be so sick. So I started writing Tatum's story because it was such a roller coaster ride, and I was unpacking all of it, and then it kind of just flowed into his story, but I would write it on my Blackberry, and I would email it back to myself and piece it together. So toward the end stages of his life, I promised him that his story was, that his spirit was going to live on forever, and that I was going to make something positive come out of it. So it took 12 years. It sat on my laptop, but when I read it back over myself, it was really for the kids and to get to know him and know of him. But between Colin and Tatum's struggles and everything that they have endured and overcome, I felt it was, the universe was telling me, put it out there, let people know. I think that one prevailing theme is also the loneliness and the isolation that I felt that I didn't even know I felt because I was pushing people away. So, and people have come to me since, and hopefully that's, something that will make a positive difference in people's world, that we all think the same things in our heads about like wishing them gone and then being so sad they're gone and feeling guilty that you wish them gone.
Yeah. Is there a part of wishing that they were gone? Is it because they're just suffering so much and you just struggle with seeing them suffer?
Oh, yeah.
Is that part of it? Yeah.
Yeah, and you say it in your inside voice, and the minute you say it, you feel this instant guilt because you feel like, am I doing this for them? Or am I doing it for me because I can't take it anymore? Yeah. So after he passed, I went through many years, didn't even know it, with a lot of survivor's guilt. I was lying to him and saying, oh yeah, we're going to, it went to his head, obviously, his brain. So there were many months of every morning he would say to me, we're going to chemo. And I'd say, soon. And then it got to be where soon nothing worked because he would ask me 2 minutes later. So I felt the need to be brutal about it. And then it would break my heart. And then 5 minutes later, he'd say again, when are we going to chemo? And it was like being stuck in this horrible cycle of, of loss and just being on your own and, not being able to save the person you love the most.
Yeah. Wow. As I was reading the book, I was overwhelmed that, with your profound sense of regret in a lot of different situations. So fast forward to today, how's your relationship with regret now, and how did you get there?
I'm still getting there. I think that
Yeah, I mean, like we,
yeah. I think that's an ongoing process.
Before you, yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I wrote a book myself, and part of it, there's one chapter in there that is on regret, and I titled it "Regret is a Thief," and if you let it, it will steal your life. And I go into what my story was about and the regrets that I face. So, yeah, I laugh with you. You know, we still struggle with it, but where are you at with it now? Is from where you were?
I don't know if it's regret as much as forgiveness for the things that I've done. Right now, I'm good with that part of my life. After reading it over, after looking at it, I've recognized that I did the best that I could with what I was given.
Right.
And, you know, although I think when you have somebody who loves you looking to you, and he really did, he thought I could save him. And as misguided as he was, I became misguided, and I thought I could save him. So, you know, that was a weird thing, because when somebody's looking to you like, save me, help me, you know, stop this pain, and you can't, and you believe that you can, you feel guilty about it. A lot of that has subsided because I know that if I could have, I would have. And I'm able to look at it and say, again, I did what I did. I'm human. I'm still here. Tatum's here. You know, my kids are still here. I don't really have many regrets as far as the choices that I've made. They didn't all, you know, end up the way that I wanted them to. But looking at my life now, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the beautiful children I have. So all those things necessarily had to happen. And some of them sucked. But if they didn't, you know, I wouldn't be who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, what a great picture of accepting, like, things are happening for you, not to you, and how you can take all those situations and turn them around for good. And all that you've been through, you're extremely, I would definitely say you are extremely resilient. Definitely. What does it resilience look like for you today as life continues to throw unexpected challenges your way? How do you navigate that?
I have to say that, so it took me, you know, after Colin died, I like packed everything away. I put it in the little bins. I didn't want to be Julie Barth anymore. I just decided I was leaving my past behind. I was starting over. I wasn't going to think about it. If I didn't think about it, it couldn't hurt me. But I found that that's why it hurt me, is because I didn't ever unpack. I didn't ever process. I didn't take the time to exhale, forgive myself, whatever that looks like. And it was this constant, you know, it's like a tidal wave that kept coming and coming. And I think I just started blocking everything out. And whatever was going on, I danced. And I thought, I'll deal with that later, deal with it later. And what I've learned is that those things that you push away and that you say, I'll deal with those later, if you don't deal with them, they're constant noise that you don't even know is happening. I liken it to like your fire alarm, you know, like when your fire alarm batteries are going off, it goes beep and you think, I'll get to that later. And then it goes again and you say, and then it becomes more frequent and you think, I got to get the ladder. And you go through this mental list of all the things it's going to take to tackle that. And you think, I don't want to do that right now. But eventually it just snowballs. And all of a sudden you're on full-on alarm. You're running around trying to fix things, and you've created a scenario where if you had just replaced the batteries, things would have been
what was the
so
tipping
much
point?
different.
Yeah, what was the point at which, to continue your analogy, what was the point at which the fire alarm went off full tilt all the time, and then what was the aftermath? Besides just
I think
changing the
getting
battery?
out of my second marriage, there was
talk
so
about
much
that?
noise. Yeah, I remarried, and it was not a good relationship. It was very emotionally abusive. And again, it takes two people. I take full responsibility for the things that I did in it. But all I know is it was 10 years of chaos and confusion. And when I got out of that situation, made sure my children were safe, and I walked away, or he walked away, whatever way you want to look at it, there was this peace like I hadn't felt in over a decade. It was like the band stopped playing and I was able to just say, okay, I have a problem. I'm just going to look at it and I'm going to fix it. It was 10 years of someone intentionally not wanting me to fix things, intentionally putting things in my way, intentionally trying to make my life more difficult. And it was this tailspin all the time. So I think being in that situation where, you said a couple minutes ago about like things are not being done to you. Well, I was in a situation for a decade where things were being done intentionally to me.
Yes, I was going to ask, can you share like an example of what that would be? Because I'm just curious to help others understand, like, what are some of the subtle signs of emotional abuse, and also, from what I understand, turned into financial abuse as well. What did that look like?
And I think even when you're in it, you don't know what it looks like.
Well, yeah. You have to step out of the noise, but... Yeah.
You do, and it's hard because you're being told, here I am, I get remarried, and I specifically chose this human because he didn't want to know anything about me. He wasn't pushing me to talk about my grief. He wasn't challenging me to deal with my issues. He was just fine in not knowing if I was okay, not caring if I was okay. In fact, if I didn't say anything, better than everything. He really did not even want to be with me on any level. But then the minute I would try and tear away and do my own thing, he would put all these roadblocks in my way. And, all I wanted was a normal life. And it was like I would have done anything. I had issues of abandonment from, losing Colin. So he would threaten to leave me anytime I would get out of line, say anything he didn't like, do anything he didn't like. And then, of course, my reaction to it would be so over the top that I didn't know where it was coming from. I was like, I have never been a yeller. I used to avoid conflict at any means. I did everything to keep the peace, to make things okay. And it felt like the harder I tried, the more that he wanted it to be bad. And so it's just this constant, I would go to him and I would think, okay, well, I'm just going to have this conversation. And within 2 minutes, I walked away saying, how did that end up with, me being called names and being told how horrible I am? Everyone kind of asks me, what are red flags? I don't think that I need to give anyone red flags, because if you're in this situation, you already are getting those red flags. I think the difference is acting on them, because we can all, it was much easier for me to say, it's me, he must be right. Even though I heard the alarms, he would tell me how crazy I was. He would tell everyone in our lives I was crazy. I was attacking him. I was stealing his money. He, made sure that everyone back at home, I had left my family, I had left my friends, and he was going back to them and telling them that I was crazy, I was stealing his money, like completely lying about everything. And then when I would reach out to these people, they would be like, and rightly so. I was so trying to get them to like me and be like, why don't you like me? And, it's like a man being in prison. No man in prison is actually guilty. So, I would be like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. And in saying I'm not crazy, I'm sure that I came across as crazy because I was doing everything, not knowing why people were shutting me out, and why they were reacting to me that way. He would pull people aside and tell them stories about me. He would save my text messages and send them in chains to his friends to say how crazy I was behind my back. He was video recording me and sending the videos to his friends. He was telling his parents that I was stealing money from him. It just got, and the more I tried to make nice, the worse it became. So really the turning point, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, looking back, what do you wish you had known about protecting yourself emotionally and financially in that situation?
I wish, I don't know that there wasn't anything that I didn't. I wish that I had listened to my intuition. I think I did know. I think I chose to not acknowledge. I think I chose, I just wrote a blog post about this, and it's kind of a long thing, but it's like I rented a vacation rental this past weekend, and I showed up. It was supposed to be a 4-bedroom, and I had 4 kids with me, and I pulled up and I thought, this isn't the house that I think that I rented. It was falling down, and I went in and it smelled horrible. But here I have these 4 kids. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, I had invested so much and I had these plans about what it was supposed to be. And somehow your brain just kind of like accepts things and it becomes inoculated to things. And then once you've thrown so much energy into something, you think, well, I'm not going to stop now. I've already lost A, B, and C. I've lost my friends. I've lost my family. I've moved across country. I have nothing left. So you stick in a situation because you're so afraid to lose something, but you don't really understand that the thing that you're going to lose is the actual thing that's hurting you the most.
Wow. So many women, like, I'm thinking about your situation and listening to it, that there might be shame and guilt, hesitancy to leave an unhealthy relationship. Definitely.
Oh my gosh, yes.
What would your advice be?
My best advice to anybody out there is, you do feel like you're going to lose it all, and you will. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Getting through it is going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. You're going to be painted badly. And one of my biggest things was, oh my gosh, people are going to find out. They're going to find out that I kicked his clothes out on the front door. They're going to find out that I sent ugly text messages. They're going to see the worst side of me. And it still scares me. It still keeps me up at night because I was being someone I don't recognize. I did things, I don't know why I did them. The thing is that you can't stay stuck out of fear. When you stay in these kinds of relationships because it's the devil it's still the devil. And at the end of the day, it's just going to get worse. There is no way to make these kind of relationships work. And definitely not in a safe, happy, fulfilling, you deserve better. But when someone beats you down, you feel like you don't deserve better. But nobody deserves to be treated the way that you are in these relationships. No one. Right. I don't care what you've done. Right. I don't care if you've sent a crazy text. It's not on you.
So when you got to that point where you realized, you were beaten down, you had nothing left, what gave you the strength to turn around and say, I'm now not going to accept this anymore. I'm leaving?
Well, I always say that I wish I could say to you, like, I just had enough. I don't know that I did it ultimately for me. When push came to shove, we were back and forth, and we had been separated, and the threats would get worse the more I would try to separate and remove myself. And I have a son who is a very tender heart, and he's very sweet, and he did not deserve any of the treatment that he got growing up. And he finally said to me, Mom, I don't understand why you keep going back to this. I don't understand why you let him, he's threatened to kill you. He's threatened to kill me. He said, I have slept in my room, protecting myself since I was 6, and hearing that, it wasn't that he didn't know it, but I didn't want to acknowledge it, and I excused it, and I made excuses for it. And if I wasn't going to do it for myself, then I needed to stop what I was doing and be big enough to understand that I've already robbed my children of safety, parts of their childhood, and I couldn't do it anymore. Again, if I couldn't stand up for myself as a mother, I need to stand up for my kids.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of strength, and I hope your story gives people a lot of courage, because sometimes you just don't think there's enough, because you have on the other side of it, like, so let's go on the other side now, because it's now, how long, just for a time frame perspective, how long has it been since you left that second marriage?
It's about 3 years now. I finally got sole custody, so it's been a battle. He came for me, said I made all these allegations about who I was and what I was doing. But I will say, if you're asking what my situation is now, I wake up every day in peace. My very, very worst day today is better than my very best day for 13 years. I don't have to worry about what somebody's doing. I don't have to worry about whether he's going to come home drunk, whether he's going to steal something, lie about something. I just get to find peace. And peace is, I will say 1,000 times, I would rather live in a trailer park or be homeless with peace than to ever have to be in a situation where someone is controlling my life and making me so unhappy and just robbing my joy. Nobody should get to do that.
Yeah. What brings you the most joy today then?
My children, they always kind of have. I mean, they always have.
Yeah.
Just
How old are your kids today as we record?
I have a 29-year-old, I think. If I'm wrong, he's going to be mad. I do it all the time. 29, 24, 21, 18, 13, or yeah, 14 and 12. Yeah.
That's all right. I can't remember my three either. You know what's really cool, though, is that your top three are the same age as my top three. Although I think my youngest is 22.
Cool. Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So it puts us
really,
in the same,
that is cool.
in the same spot there.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
It's hard. Yeah, it's weird to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, my oldest will be 30 in July, and I'm like, oh my God, now I feel really old.
Right? I shouldn't have been doing anything for 30 years, definitely not being a parent.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, you look back, and as a parent, like me personally, I didn't really build anything. I was just a mom for a long, long, long time. And
well,
so
then you built the most important thing out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's talk about your work. Out of all of your trials, tribulations, you formed the Colin James Barth Outreach. Talk about how that was born, why it's there, what it is, and where you're at with that today.
So as I said earlier, when Colin was dying, I really kind of felt like something good had to come out of that situation. I didn't know how, I didn't know when. When I read the book on my laptop, going through what I went through, trying to save my children in court, I would never have guessed that someone could come along and make the allegations that they did, and it would just be taken, and I would be forced to defend myself. It really was just such an eye-opener to me. One of the hardest days of my life is when the court came in and they were no longer my children. I could not make decisions for them. Wow. The court told me what I could do, that when they had to attend counseling, when I had to hand them over. I mean, I am a very, controlling in, I think, the most possibly good way when it comes to my children. I'm very involved. I care very greatly about what they're doing. And, to be told that I can't make decisions for my own children, that it was a safety issue and nobody seemed to care. So I always kind of knew I was going to do something for Colin. And when he was dying, he didn't have many resources. So we were so blessed to have a community. I don't know where we would be today, that stepped in and helped us and donated and never let us feel like things were not going to be okay. And so I knew I wanted to give back in some way. So I can't really do anything to cure cancer. I could raise funds for pancreatic cancer, but there's organizations out there that are taking care of that. And I can't do anything about that. And genetic conditions, like I couldn't do anything to change what happened to me in all those years. But with the second situation, I played into it and I could have changed it. And I'm just, my hope is that through awareness and talking about these things and, going out there and airing my dirty laundry as I know it is, writing the books that I do, that it will give other people the courage to get out of their situations and stop worrying about what other people think and, how it's... So our organization was based on the idea that, women, when you get divorced, the average woman's standard of living goes down 44%. The average man's goes down 10%. And that's in a normal divorce. So if we're talking about, not a contested divorce, you're upwards of $40,000, $50,000 right out the gate to try and defend your children. And if you can't, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't stop him from seeing them. I couldn't even email my lawyer because that was another $25 that I didn't have.
Yeah. Wow.
So I love, you have to leave your kids unprotected. You have to follow the court orders. And if you don't have anyone in your boat, then, you have no say. So the charity was formed to acknowledge, first of all, that emotional abuse exists because it is not in any way acknowledged by courts. It doesn't exist. Yeah. It's not a thing. And that is where our organization really, the heart of it is that it does exist and it's very hard to overcome. And if the law refuses to acknowledge it, then, we're going to do what we can to provide mentoring, to, be a safe space, to help with legal fees so that no woman ever has to leave her child unprotected because she can't afford it, and to help build a network of, family court judges, lawyers, guardian ad litems, they know this is going on. They've seen it. They can identify it. I'm sure their hands are tied too. But we would like to build a network of people that say enough is enough. We're not going to keep dragging these kids into court. We're not going to keep dragging these mothers into court until they can't afford to pay their bills. So it's a big initiative,
Yeah.
People say that to me all the time, like, oh, you're going to change the world. And, well, hopefully I can,
One person at a time, one small step, one person at a time to acknowledge something that is not talked about enough. And that's why I was asking you. Yeah, that's why I was asking you, because emotional abuse is one of those categories that you can't quite put a finger on. It's not like looking at somebody and saying, okay, well, you're an alcoholic, you're drinking X number of drinks a day, you come home, you do X, Y, and Z. You can actually put something quantitative on it, whereas emotional abuse is something that's a fuzzy gray area. I feel like it's something that you can't quite, it's there, it's happening, but you can't quite put a finger on it. So what you're doing is
there aren't any bruises, like you look in the mirror. At least if somebody's hurt you, you can look in the mirror and the bruise is there. You can acknowledge. Your brain says, yep, I was hurt. In emotional abuse, there's no healing cycle. There's just ripping.
Yeah.
And you can't see it. And the person who's doing it to you is literally convincing you that you're crazy and it's you and you're the problem. And you begin to believe it. So where do you go from there, It is very complex, and I will be honest, if somebody had said to me, do you think that you could ever be in a relationship like you were, I would say no. Coming off of, because everyone thought I was so strong with Tatum, with Colin, and here you are, and I was this character that, overcame, I revived Tatum 5 times when she died in front of me. I got her to where she needed to be, but here I am in a second relationship, giving away control, letting my children be talked down to and abused, and it just is mind-boggling to me. It really is.
In your second marriage, what were some of the red flags in the beginning that you knew something wasn't quite right?
As I said, so going back to the fire alarm analogy, houses are protected by fire alarms, cars are protected by car alarms. Your body is protected by your own internal alarm. So if there is something, we call them red flags, but what I really think they are is alarms. Because, you just sit, there were several times when something happened and I just went, that just doesn't sound right. There's something not right here. I remember the very first time we were in an argument about something silly, I wasn't even arguing. I didn't want him to go out of town because I missed him and I loved him. And I said, well, I don't want you to go. And he said, passive, aggressive, and hung up on me. And I was like, and it took me back because first of all, no one had ever hung up on me. And secondly, I was like, I don't know what that means. And I don't know why you hung up on me. And it was one after the other. If your brain is saying something, if you're confused all the time, if you go into a situation and you think it's going to go one way and it goes the complete opposite, if you've never behaved the way that you are behaving, yelling, screaming, fighting, crying, being somebody other than yourself, that is not coming from within. That is your reaction to someone else and their behavior. So instead of blaming yourself, instead of internalizing it all, instead of thinking, if I am better then, because it doesn't work that way. If you are better, then they will be worse. And unfortunately, that's where pleasers and good people, they get sucked into these situations because they just want it to work and they will do anything. And if someone's telling them it's them, as a pleaser, you want to please them. And so you're like, okay, I'll fix what's wrong with me. It's definitely got to be wrong with me.
Wow. In your book, when people read it, what are some of the takeaways you'd like them to walk away with?
Are we talking about my first book or my second one?
Notes from a Blackberry. I apologize. I did not realize there was a second book.
There is. So Notes from a Blackberry is the second one's not out yet, but Notes
Well, then talk about the second one then too. Yeah, feel free to talk about that one as well. I did not know.
Sure.
Sorry,
yeah,
I didn't know
problem.
There was another one.
No, that's fine. When you get to the end, you'll be like, so the second one's called From Blackberries to Thorns. And then I'm working on my third book, which is going to be From Thorns to Blossoms.
Oh, wow.
So, Notes from a Blackberry is Colin and Tatum's story. The second book is my second part of the story. Tatum actually ends up getting cancer and everything falls apart. And then my third book is going to be kind of an unraveling and thoughts about all this, and maybe more of an action book where I give practical things that hopefully uplift people and resources and how to deal with what you're going through, because it can feel, and I think that's the theme throughout all of these books, is that, I felt very isolated. I felt very alone. I hid in my own shame, whether it was survivor's guilt or domestic emotional abuse. I kept it to myself. I blamed myself. I hid those parts of me that I felt were embarrassing. But unfortunately, those parts of ourselves that we don't like are usually the best parts of us. It's what defines us. Yeah, and we all run from them because we find them, I always felt being a pleaser meant that I was weak, or that I was too emotional, or that I was, but I embrace the pleaser in me, because I've come to realize that that's who I am, and I'm okay with it. And if you're okay with you, then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. And that's really hard to accept. But if you can take that one piece and say, if I can look in the mirror every day and I'm okay with me, then everything calms, because it doesn't matter what other people think. And you're going to make decisions based on what you want and what's good for you.
Wow. How do you come to terms? You said you were talking about the pleaser part. How do you come to terms with being a people pleaser, being okay with that? But then the other side of people pleasing is it's hard. People can take advantage of you, or it sometimes goes the wrong way. So the negative aspects of people pleasing, how do you navigate those?
I think that you have to learn who is worth your energy and who is not. There are people, when you're a pleaser, you gain pleasure from other people being happy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love when my children are happy. I love, I think it's really recognizing who's worth pleasing and who is not. So if you're with somebody, the negative side of pleasing is, sure, I will tell you, even to this day, I'm sure people would still come along and I would still be taken advantage of, because I refuse to harden myself. I refuse to not be who I am. And I certainly refuse to allow him to take that last part of me that defines me. I won't change. I refuse to see the world as bad. I refuse to see people as, negative, because it doesn't do any good. I mean, I want to remain who I am, but I hopefully have learned that when those red flags do come along, then I walk away. I don't keep trying. If somebody is giving you a signal or behaving as if they don't appreciate you, they really don't. It's not an act. It's not, they don't.
Can't make.
But there are 100 people that will.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. As we come to a close, I like to ask my guests all the three following questions. So we're going to wrap it up here. Please, would you share a book or a resource that has had a significant impact on you?
The Gabby Petito documentary. I saw, and I hopefully am pairing up with them in the future. I'm in talks with them about awareness and going into schools for educational purposes and books and academia. I saw her. I still was kind of on the fence about what I was still unpacking. This was a couple of years ago, because the original documentary came out, several years ago, and I watched it, and I saw that part where the police stopped her, and I saw how quickly the situation turned. And for those of you who aren't aware of, I can't imagine, but if you're not, Gabby Petito was a beautiful 20-year-old, wonderful woman who was with her fiance, and he reported her missing. And when push came to shove, she was not missing. He made her go missing. He actually ended up killing her. So, but there's this part of the documentary where the police come in and they ask her, were you the aggressor? And she stops and she says, yeah. And in that moment, she took responsibility for everything that went on to that point. And the police turned it into she was the aggressor. They set him up in a hotel. And she ended up dying for it. And that profoundly changed me, because that was the proof that I needed that emotional abuse is as dangerous as I think it is. Just because it escalates, and unfortunately in emotional abusive situations, it only takes once. I mean, he might not have ever hit her. He might have never laid his hands on her. I don't know. She's not here to talk about it, but that's the problem, is she's not. And it just took once. So that profoundly changed everything about my mindset in doing this. I think that she is the reason that I decided to come forward with more than just my first book and release my second one.
Wow. 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 I don't even know how to follow up. Wow. Yeah. It's amazing how a situation, circumstance, or story will profoundly change our life. As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Stop worrying about what other people think of you. Make decisions. If it's the smallest decision, you decide what you want to eat tonight for dinner. It's one small step, because then you get what you want to eat for dinner. And I will tell you that it seems small, but that one will lead to many, many more when you put yourself first and stop worrying about what everybody else thinks or what they're going to say. I think when just making decisions that are based on what's good for you.
Great. Julie, how can people find you and reach out to you?
The easiest way is probably through my website, which is juliebarthauthor.net. It has links to my charity, my daughter Tatum's. Oh, that's probably what I should have talked about. My daughter Tatum's art. She's an artist now after everything she's been through.
Well, I did go there. She has some cool art.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So, and 25% of all the proceeds go to fund the outreach program that we have. So, that's a big initiative for us. And it also has my books and podcasts and everything else there. You can find all my social media handles there. I wish I was a little better at social media, but I'm working on it.
It's okay. I think the universe expands what needs to get expanded and how it needs to get expanded. So
I love that.
I'm in the same boat.
That was the best thing I've heard all day. Thank you. I love that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, Julie, thank you so much for the gift of your time. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so blessed to have spoken with you and had this opportunity to get to know you.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way. And I really enjoyed your book as well. I did read it.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.